That's enough saying hello. Shabbat Shalom. Look at what time it is. Look at what time it is. That's how we roll here at ORME. En punto. Bidiyuk. Right on the minute. So, song number 1, and I suspect some of you already know this. Let's follow our Madrichei Shirah and welcome in the Shabbat. Go, guys.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Mitzvah, gereret, mitzvah. Woo! Agera, gereret, agera. Ow, mitzvah, gereret, mitzvah. Gereret, mitzvah. Ya la 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 la. Yehi tzadik. Zeto. 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 Li tzadik zemazeh. Tomei mitzvah, gereret, mitzvah. Woo! Agera, gereret, agera. Ow, mitzvah, gereret, mitzvah. Gereret, mitzvah. Ya la 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 la. Yehi tzadik. Zeto. 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 Li tzadik zemazeh. Tomei mitzvah, gereret, mitzvah. Woo! Agera, gereret, agera. Ow, mitzvah, gereret, mitzvah. Gereret, mitzvah. Ya la 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 la.
Thank you very much, Madrichei Shirah. You can go sit down. On the song sheet, Or Zarua, what number? 2, song number 2. No? What song is Or Zarua? It's not on there. And you know why? Because it's in the prayer book. It's in the prayer book on page 388. The very last page in the prayer book. Remember, it's a Hebrew book, goes from right to left. So the very last page, a page of lyrics has been pasted into your prayer book. That's why it's not on the song sheet. 388. Or zaru ala tzadik, uleYisrael lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, uleYisrael lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, uleYisrael lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, uleYisrael lev simcha.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Paul Kipnis with Cantor Doug Kotler and Rabbi Julia Weiss. We welcome you all here to Shabbat services here at Congregation Or Ami. We are thrilled that you all came out on this little rainy night. Rain is good, sign of fertility, a renewal. We could use it here in Southern California. It's also God is maybe crying some tears of joy as we get ready to celebrate two a bar mitzvah and a bat mitzvah this weekend as Ella Polvi and Elijah Paul become b'nai mitzvah this weekend. And we are thrilled that you are all here. Thank you to those who came to Shabbat dinner beforehand, led by our CPCR Communications and Program Committee. And we're also very excited that we'll introduce him later, that we have a guest speaker for our national movement from Washington, D.C., Rabbi Jonah Pesner, who will share a vision of social action, social justice that is fabulous. I want to also, they're coming in at all ages. They're so excited for this. How old is that baby?
Almost a year.
Okay, so if it becomes a little difficult to, no, I'm coming over and holding the baby. They got the whole thing done. No, we got it. We do have a children's sanctuary if anyone needs it, and I do want everyone to know that, particularly those who came in from the east, that we have the speaker will come after the main part of the service closes, so that the younger ones, if they have to leave, that's okay. We'll let you know when that's going to happen. Thank you to all of you who are worshiping with us via the live stream. We're thrilled wherever you are, in hospital beds, and around your living room, in the den. If you're around Shabbat dinner tables, know that we're holding you as part of our worship community, and we're thrilled. Thank you to Bronze Productions for helping make that happen. It is Shabbat, and we are here. And if you have a cell phone, I'm going to ask that you take it out for a second and just make sure it is off. I find that the cell phone that goes off in the service is the one you are 100% sure is already off. And so I'd like to call up our two b'nai mitzvah, Ella and Elijah, and your parents and siblings to join us up here on the bima. The Polvi's on this side, the Paul's on that side. Let's turn to page 2. got for Hanukkah.
You know, and I was thinking, Rabbi, you know, they have a mechitza, a curtain, a separation in Orthodox synagogues between men and women, and supposedly so that the men will keep their focus on the prayer. Nobody was thinking about the prayer. We need a mechitza for the baby. That's it.
And which is exactly the segue we were talking about before.
Oh, we were.
Because the next prayer, Shema, and listen, ends with...
Madrikei Shirah, come on up.
Madrikei Shirah, come on up. Shema Yisrael, pay attention, all you Israelites, you Jews, you who struggle with God. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. God, the eternal our God, the eternal is one. That oneness doesn't mean there's only one God, which we do teach. In Judaism, Christians see it different, Muslims different, and so on. But it also means that God is the oneness that connects you, to that gorgeous baby, to all of you, to these fantastic young people singing, to the people who are homeless in the streets in LA, to the people down in Africa and South America, to our brothers and sisters in Israel, to people we know and don't know. We are all connected as one. And when we remember that, we lift each other up and we heal the world.
Page 35 in the prayer book.
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you're lost, you feel afraid, and you don't know what to say, then listen to our God. Is there a question on your mind? Is the answer hard to find? Then listen to our God. Listen with all your heart and soul, and with all your might. Write them and learn them and teach them well, every morning and night. Close your eyes and listen. Quiet yourself, there's nothing to say. Stop all the chatter that gets in the way and listen to our God. When the wind and the thunder finally disappears, there's still a voice that you will hear if you listen to our God. You can hear it from the top of the highest hill, or from the valley below. It can come from the edge of the universe. It can come from within your soul. Close your eyes and listen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Vaed. Listen to our God. Listen to our God.
continue on page 40. I'd like to invite up our bat mitzvah tomorrow, Ella, to lead us in Mikamocha. On page 40. La 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 la, ya la la ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la la, la 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 ya la la
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, no ra tehilo o sefelet, no ra tehilo o sefelet.
Together.
Mahalichutecha ra'uvanecha, bokei ayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, se'eli anu v'amiru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed.
In our bar mitzvah tomorrow, Elijah, come on up and lead us on page 44 with Veshamra.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Beinu vein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam.
Together.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam.
I now invite you to turn to page 48. We rise for Amidah, page 48.
ata Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avotenu v'imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor HaManorah ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו מלך עוזר ומושיע מגן אברהם עזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו, איש אלי עבר. ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני בחיי הכל.
Page 52.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. And if you'll take your song sheets, song number 2. The prophet Zechariah suggested that there will come a day when Adonai will be sovereign over all the earth, when it won't be human need or greed or desire that will be paramount, but the values of Torah and of the best of religions, that God's name will be one because we will be one, because we will do the work to create wholeness and harmony within this earth. Back in 1995, in honor of the Union for Reform Judaism's National Biennial Convention, 5,000 Jews from all over the world, Reform Jews getting together, in honor of a new musical album by the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism. There was a song that was written for and then premiered for the album that was created for the Religious Action Center for the biennial. And at the center of that album, leading it off, was a song called Bayom Hahu, written by Cantor Duncan, number 2.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Doors unlocked, we walk on streets alive with joy. Each stranger's face becomes the face of God. It's not far away till we reach that day. disappears. Each desperate soul will have a home. Each helpless child will have a hand to hold. None shall be afraid. When we reach that day, sing together. Mahu, Mahu, everybody sing. And on that day, the winds blow fresh and clear. Our forests grow, our waters pure. We treasure life in all its many forms. It's the only way for us to reach that day. Mahu, all together. Mahu. And on that day, the world will be at peace. A shining lamp will lead the way. Every knee must bend and every voice give thanks. So let us pray that we reach that day. By Mahu,
I would like to invite up Diane Gubin and our bat mitzvah Ella and bar mitzvah Elijah to receive a gift.
Elijah and Ella, you did magnificent. Mazel tov to you and to your families. I'm truly honored to share the bima with you. Your voices brought much joy to us all. Becoming a bar bat mitzvah, it wasn't easy, was it? No. Did you have a lot to do? Yeah. So let's see. You studied for months, right? You learned to read and chant in Hebrew. You learned your Torah portion. You learned your prayers. You learned how to write a speech. It was a lot of work, right? It gets better. I am so proud of our amazing team that we had to get you ready for this process. Rabbi Paul, Rabbi Julia, Cantor Doug, and Diane. We were all here to support you. But let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do. Okay, so Elijah, I understand, I spoke to your mom. She said that you're a 7th grader at Mariposa, right? You like musical theater tech and design. She also said you're very, very musical. You play the guitar, the mandolin, the bass, and the drums. That's awesome. And here at ORME, you're part, well, you were just up on the bima right now, so you're part of our Madricha Shirah, the youth program, where you play the guitar, and it was just awesome. You also, here at ORME, you're part of Hub and SOMPT, our youth programs. You've attended URJ SciTech Camp. and you've spent summers at Camp Newman. You also like Dungeons and Dragons, right? And your mom says you like to read all the time. And your mitzvah project, you worked with bunnies in foster care, which I think is awesome. What did you do with the bunnies?
We cleaned their cages, did their litter boxes. Yeah, bunnies can be litter box trained.
Oh.
And
And I asked your mom, how many did you bring home?
none.
I know. Great job. And Ella, you are in 7th grade at A.E. Wright Middle School. And since you were 5 years old, your mom told me you were very athletic and you've been playing softball. And you're now with a travel team, and she said that you played 2 positions. So what are your positions?
Second and catcher.
Terrific. She said you enjoy dancing, being with your friends, and you love spending time with your dogs. that was an inside joke, right?
Okay.
Where she dances. Okay. What kind of dogs do you have?
Labradoodle and a lab.
Oh, okay, great. And you're a big Kings fan, and you and your dad regularly go to the games, right? And for your mitzvah project, you work with Sova, right? And for both of you, this is just the beginning of your Jewish journey. I mean, there's so much more here at ORME with Lamti and Samti and all the team programs and so many friends that you have and you're going to make, and great adventures as you continue to go forward and work with Tikkun Olam, healing the world. And with the many activities here at ORME, you will always have a home. And I have a little gift for you on behalf of Congregation ORME's Humane and Caring Committee. So thank you very much. Great job and mazel tov. Enjoy the weekend and congratulations.
Semen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, semen tov, semen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, semen tov, semen tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, semen tov.
Today at 12:35 p.m., I woke up. No, I did not get to sleep in. My kids had me up at 5:30, although that's actually sleeping in for me. Today at 12:35 p.m., I was invited to sit around the table at the Conrad Hilton Foundation, along with several funders for housing and opportunity. FHO is comprised of 12 leading foundations who are working together to ensure stable housing in thriving communities for those who need it most. They are committed to making investments that will spark large-scale change. Because of the social justice work we do at ORME, under the leadership and guidance of our rabbinic intern, Mayor Bargeron, and along with our Sukkot Shalom, our Housing and Justice for All team, I was invited to represent an organization, Congregation ORME, that prioritizes the FHO's vision committed to helping finding housing for those who need it the most. And while sitting there, proud to represent ORME, I woke up. Why? Because Pamela Marshall spoke to us, a single mother who found herself unemployed, drunk, and high on the streets of Skid Row after a chronic illness went undiagnosed for far too long. The pain was too awful, the medical bills too expensive, and she shared her story with us, and she talked about hope. That even people like Pamela, who were hopeless, can become hopeful with support, love, and healing. I woke up to Pamela's story like Jacob in this week's Torah portion. In Vayetze, Jacob lays his head upon a rock and dreams about angels going up and down, a ladder connected from earth to heaven. He wakes up from his dream and he declares, God was in this place, and I did not know. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner describes Jacob's declaration as the beginning of knowing about God. Jacob pays attention and wakes up. And there God was. There God is. Like Jacob, I woke up and God was in that place with the funders of housing and opportunity, with Pamela Marshall, who taught me how we can help heal this broken world, how we can help heal our friends struggling with addiction, suffering from depression, anxiety, PTSD, how we can help support our family recovering from injury or surgery, those we love who are caregivers and are feeling broken. God was in that place because I realized hope was possible in a pretty broken world. So let's wake up. in this moment. Let's declare God in this place, this sacred community, this room of friends and family who struggle with our own brokenness, who are in need of healing, support, and love. Let's fill this room with hope and healing. Tonight, we ask for healing for
my friend Eileen,
men and women of the U.S. military,
My friend Peter Wells, my wife Joe,
my friend Nancy Kaufman,
my daughter,
My friend Natalia.
my friend Martin,
my cousin Marcia,
my mother Judy Sutcliffe,
Sylvia Rayfield,
my friend Steve Stagg,
my brother-in-law in Kansas City who suffered with cancer.
Oh God, heal us now.
Song number 4 on the song sheet. Refaenu Adonai Nerafeh Hoshienu Ivashea El Karov Lechol Korav Ach Karov Lirea Yishor healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray to once again be whole. רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, רפואה שלמה, heal us now. Heal us now. הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך וראם ונעשם עד העולם. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, ענה אדוני הושיענה. We pray healing of our people. We pray for healing of the land, for peace for every race and nation, every child, every woman, every man. Oh, please heal us now. רפואת הנפש ורפואת
announcements. There is a poster board as you're leaving tonight. Check it out for shoes that fit. It's why are we giving shoes? We're giving shoes to kids who need them so they can smile, they can focus their brains on school. Their eyes light up with excitement when they open their new shoe box. So their thoughts will be more confident. They will have a bright future. So we invite you to you'll see the shoes in the envelopes. Take a shoe, it says the size, and we ask that you bring it back and drop it off by next Friday. Orme has a new apparel shop. I'm so excited about this. orme.org/shop. You can pick one up just in time for Hanukkah, either leggings, we've got hoodies, we've got a beanie, we have t-shirts. It's amazing. It's all on swag.
Orme swag.
It's not the hip word apparently anymore. Apparel shop. So it's our online apparently I use it all the time. But anyway, orme.org/shop. It's a great way to shop for our friends and family for the holiday. And come celebrate, speaking of the holiday, come celebrate Hanukkah with us on December 27th. We're gonna have a lot of fun. There's a Tot Shabbat at 5 o'clock. There's a community dinner at 5:30, and then our family Shabbat service at 6:30. Come with your Chanukiot. If you want to make your own, there's a Chanukia DIY Chanukia contest and celebrity judges, so bring those along with you. And this Sunday, December 8th, we have our holiday shopping spree, New Directions for Youth. It's at Kohl's. The information is, again, all the information's on the table as you leave Orme. Join us for this mitzvah where we take at-risk youth around Kohl's and give them $100 and help shop with them for the holidays. And on Tuesday, January 14th, we have New Grounds Jewish-Muslim Partnership for Change with Andrea Hodos, who's the program co-director. It's Living in a Shared World, an evening of Jewish-Muslim dialogue. We invite you to go online and check out all of the events that are coming up, as well as Friday, February 7th, Rabbi Hera Person, it's our speaker Shabbat. She's the chief executive of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, and we invite you to join us for any and all of those. If you want to know what's happening each Shabbat or during the weekdays, check out this is at the front by Susie's desk at the way front of the office. It has our everyday daily happenings at Orme.
Susie Gruber, in the back.
Everybody wants to know what this board is. It's been at the front of the synagogue, and when we came in, everybody saw the board, and I am going to tell you what it is. We have a big gala coming up in March. It is our biggest fundraiser of the year. It is thank you. I've never needed one before. It's a night to remember. It is the party of the year, and we have music. There'll be dancing. We have food. There'll be eating. We have bars. There'll be drinking. I'll be drinking. 3 bars, 4 bars. It's going to be fabulous. It's adults only. No kids. They love your kids, but adults only.
We're really inclusive here at Congregation Orme.
Most of us love your kids at Orme. That's why we have a children's sanctuary, and we're building a mechitza.
But, speaking about the kids, a lot of this is really for the kids. We have an amazing program for your children, for your young teens, for your young adults. And to make these programs as fabulous as they are, we need help. We need money for activities, for our fabulous teachers, for our educators, for our programs. And a lot of what we raise goes towards your children. And frankly, they are our future. They are the future of the synagogue. They are the future of the Reform movement. And to make it even more fabulous, we are honoring 2 wonderful people. Michelle November, who is an educator and very involved in our Jewish community for years and years and years, has devoted her life and her work to our children and to the community. And she's bringing along with her that night our very own Rabbi Paul, who will be honoring also. And we are who we are because of the work of Rabbi Paul. So I am asking for your help There's so many ways you can help sponsor one of the activities there, and your names will be up at the event that evening. You could do a tribute in our tribute ad, buy tickets. Buy tickets. Some of your memberships and partnerships come with tickets, some don't. Please bring your friends, bring your family, bring your relative. You will be a hit because they will really have a fabulous evening. Please join us, please help us, and have fun. And it's in March 7th, and I'll be there. So, thank you.
We celebrate, we hear beautiful music, we pray for those who are ill, and we take a moment in the midst of every time we get together to think about those who are no longer with us. For we stand, as our cantor sings, we stand on the shoulders of those who can't come before us. Thursday night, last night, before I ran down to downtown LA for a beautiful, important gala for the APAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, Cantor Doug and I were here in this sanctuary. The room was filled as we said goodbye to Judith Allen, the mother of our congregant, Serena Arajo. This morning we were at the cemetery saying goodbye to Don Sufal, father of a couple of our kids here at the congregation. This week we're remembering, I think it's the yahrzeit of Bob Newman coming up this coming week. Many of you are remembering your loved ones. We are here, we do the work, we shine the light, we do, because the values that are passed down from Torah, from family, midor lador, from generation to generation. Some of you here are remembering your loved ones during this time of Kaddish. So I bring my hand around the room, I invite you to mention their names and their relationship to you aloud. This evening we're remembering
Me and Miles, my mom and dad.
Men and women of the U.S. military.
Sister, ma'am.
My cousin Lauren Carr, sister Kathy. Son Bill, parents.
Harold Daphne, my father.
May their memories all be for blessing. We turn to page 294, and if comfortable, we rise as we say together on 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divrach irutei v'yamichma chutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach leolam ul'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbahar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha brichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shloma rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav v'yinaseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, Imru, Amen. May the one who sends peace in the high heavens send peace to us, to all Israel and all the world as we say together. Amen. The world should be filled with peace. Please be seated.
Song number 3 on the song sheet.
Yavo Shalom, Lord Yavo Shalom Aleinu,
shalom aleinu. O Yavo shalom. O Yavo shalom aleinu. Shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'im imeru. Ve'imeru amen.
Ose shalom b'roma, uyase shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tzevei.
Yaseh shalom. Shala shalom. Yaseh shalom. Ve'imeru amen. Shalom, ve'imeru amen.
And that's what peace is supposed to sound like. And that's what Torah is supposed to do to you. When you read the words of Torah and hear the prayers and sing with the cantor and these incredible musicians, young and less young, it's supposed to lift you up. And it's supposed to move you so that you walk out those doors and you look at the world and its brokenness and then you put it together. Repair it. The Takein Ha'olam, do Tikkun Olam, fix the world. I'm transitioning into an introduction to our speaker. So for those who need to go because the kids are young, this is a good time to hightail it. I'll stop for a second. And now I have a couple of seats in the front if people want to move up. Don't take the kid. Leave the kid. Okay. So, to bring it back. So there are some seats up front if people want to come up. It's up to you. Back to peace. Back to Torah, back to values. It doesn't just happen, Tikkun Olam. It doesn't just happen that the world gets put together. We need people working with other people. We need teachers teaching us. We need people to inspire us. The Reform movement is known throughout this country for its work on Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. And it's because in Washington, D.C., the visionaries in our national movement years ago said we need to have a presence in Washington, not to get involved in the politics, but to speak to the values so that when they deal with the issues, Jewish values are being heard. Sometimes it gets messy, but often it's uplifting. Sometimes we disagree, and always we are helping to move issues forward. The Religious Action Center is the shining star in the Union for Reform Judaism because it helps us do justice, love mercy, and transform the world. Tonight, I'm pleased to invite to our congregation one of the shining lights of the Reform movement of Jewry. You've seen him on all the news shows, left, right, center, up, down, and on. When I, having done this for years and years and years in Cantor Doug and Rabbi Julia, when we get tired and we need to be inspired, I go onto their website, or I go to a convention and sit at the feet of this somewhat younger, with more hair, articulate, inspiring man, my friend, my teacher, and I walk away ready to do the work of fixing this world. The reason Or Ami does what it does is because of people like and because of the person of Rabbi Jonah Pesner, Senior Vice President of the Union for Reform Judaism, but equally or more important, the Director of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism. We are a small shul of just around 400 households. There are 200 to 300 congregations of 1,000 or more. They schlep all over the world, these leaders, to speak at the big places. That Jonah took time, Rabbi Pesner took time to be here with us is a testament to what Or Ami does. I am touched, I am honored, and I am excited to invite my friend Jonah Pesner, Rabbi Jonah Pesner, to share our bima.
Shabbat Shalom. Oh, you people know how to throw Shabbos. Boy, that Oseh, can we do that again? Wow, no, I'm not kidding. Or could I have the baby back? I kind of want to hang with the baby. All right, can I let you in on it? Can you hear me okay? Is this my, okay, great. I need to let you all in on a secret. All right, and it's a secret that I've been keeping for a while, since like a year ago when I scheduled my visit to come to Or Ami in Calabasas. But I'm going to need help from your past president. Fred, will you help me with the secret? I need you to remove Michelle November and Rabbi Paul Kipnis from the room for about 1 minute, and I'll wave when it's time to bring them back in, okay? Can you do that? Michelle, where are you?
You did not tell me this.
It wouldn't be funny if I told you. Is your rabbi funny? Yeah. Okay, tonight I'm going to funny the rabbi. Yeah, just exactly, he knows, correct, exactly right. So here's the truth. Here's our secret, which we're going to let them in on in a moment. We saw the wonderful Or Ami 1 poster board a little while ago. About a year ago, Rabbi Paul called me and said, I'm going to be celebrating my 20th year in the rabbinate at Or Ami, my congregation. And I would like to begin the celebration by having you come and offer a keynote address. And I said, well, you know, Paul, for you, I would do anything. You have been a remarkable hero for the Religious Action Center. You've been a hero for our URJ camping, Camp Newman, for Nifty, for all the things of Reform Judaism that we care about, Paul. You've been a total hero. And so, of course, I'm going to come and celebrate you. Well, in the intervening months, I think you know, both Michelle and Paul had losses in their lives. And they focused on healing as a family. And how many of you supported them in the ways that for the last 20 years they've supported you? Okay. So plans changed. The big kickoff to the 20-year celebration isn't happening tonight. But I kind of want to do it anyway. How about you? Yeah. Right, can we celebrate? So here's what I want to do. When they come back in, I want you all to stand up and scream, surprise! And then we'll sing, happy anniversary to you, and we'll celebrate their 20th anniversary with the congregation. Can we do that? Yes. What's that? Yeah, pledge, yes, you get, right, exactly. We can yell surprise, we can sing to them, and then you can pledge to the gala. Okay, good. But I'll let you let's do that before. Okay, so we're going to bring, thank you, Cantor. We're going to bring them back. You all ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary, Michelle and Paul. Happy anniversary to you. Can we celebrate 20 years of a spectacular rabbinage? Now you can sit down. So thank you, Rabbi Paul Kipnis, for giving me the opportunity to celebrate you. And thank you to Rabbi Julia Weiss, and thank you to Cantor Doug Kotler. It is a tremendous honor to be with you at Or Ami. I love you. Or Ami, the light of my people. Think about the ways in which this congregation, for its existence, has been a light to the Jewish people and to all people everywhere. Just look at what we did tonight. I mean, this is incredible. The joy of Judaism. And there's no better way to begin the celebration of the rabbinate, the 20 years of Paul Kipnis, and the work that he has led and done than celebrating the kinds of achievements and accomplishments of the congregation. Filling the congregation with joy by inviting a 1-year-old up to dance with a rabbi is so much a metaphor for who Paul is and what he does. Because it was, as you saw, a moment of utter authenticity for his joy of Jewish life. Right? And so it becomes a metaphor for everything I think that Paul has done. And the Madrichei Shira, so I'll give a shout out to Doug Kotler, who is, I mean, you know, a hero of Reformed Jewish music, and has been at this long enough that I don't want to tell you, where's Doug Kotler? I don't want to tell you where I was when I first heard Doug Kotler sing. It'll make him feel old. And Rabbi Julia Weiss, who in many ways is part of why we're here, because when Rabbi Kipnis had a vision around really bringing social justice to the center of the Or Ami community, to be a light not only to my people, the Jewish people, but a light to the people of Calabasas, a light to the people of Los Angeles, a light to the people across California, particularly the widows, the orphans, the stranger, the most vulnerable of our community, who yearn for support and fellowship. He brought in Rabbi Weiss, or you all brought in Rabbi Weiss, to help lead that effort. And with Sukkot Shalom and the various other initiatives, it's been quite remarkable. As he referenced earlier, Rabbi Kipnis is significantly older. Somebody asked earlier, did I know him from back in the rabbinical school days? And I said, yes. We certainly knew each other when he was a rabbinical school student and I was a high school student. Just saying. But I want to reflect back to you, and he referenced that there's plenty of large congregations that I could go and give speeches at, but I need to be right here, right now. Because I don't think there's a congregation in the Reformed Jewish movement that has gotten more awards than this congregation over the last 20 years. Okay? You can clap. I haven't told you what they were yet. You ready for this? You've won 2 Balin Outreach Awards, which means you're at the leading edge of welcoming and engaging interfaith families. But the culture of inclusion, and by the way, it was really remarkable earlier when, where's Kathy? Can I share the story that, Kathy, where are you? Okay, good. Then I can tell the story, and I'm going home tonight, and she'll never know. It's all good. I asked her why she loved the congregation, and she said that of all the congregations she's ever stepped foot in, this was the first one where when she and her husband came in, every single person welcomed them and spoke to them. Now, here's the thing, folks. I travel all across the Reform movement. I love all my 900 congregations equally. But often I show up as the keynote speaker and nobody talks to me until they find out that I'm the keynote speaker. They're like, oh, Rabbi, welcome. How could it be that we have a culture where the first thing that happens when you walk through the door is anything other than welcome, we love you. What brought you here? How can you find meaning and purpose here? So kol hakavod to you that that's the culture, that's the first thing out of the mouth of a lay leader who I meet earlier. But the Balin Awards, which celebrate interfaith family inclusion, only are the tip of the iceberg, because you have also leaned into being a welcoming community to the LGBTQ community And you're part of a cohort of Reformed congregations figuring out how to be fully inclusive of people with disabilities and regardless of their abilities. So whether it's LGBT folk, people with disabilities, interfaith families, multiracial families, whoever, this is an audaciously hospitable congregation, and you should be congratulated. And you've also won 2 technology awards. Now, here's why I say that in reference to the audacious hospitality. When Rabbi Paul began the service by looking right into the people who are at home and spoke to them directly and said, whether you are homebound or at a hospital bed or just in your den or your living room, you are here with us. We love you. That's audacious hospitality. Social media and live streaming and website, that's not technology. That's engagement of humanity. That's the way we broaden and expand our reach. How many of you have traveled with Rabbi Paul or the congregation either to Israel or to the APAC Policy Conference in DC? So Rabbi Paul has also built a whole cadre of relationships around traveling together, around going to our promised land, the Holy Land of Israel, advocating for Israel in Washington, and that also isn't typical and normal. And here's the part about you that I'm most proud. You have won not one, but 2 Fane Social Justice Awards. The Fane Social Justice Awards lift up and celebrate congregations that are the leading edge of social action and social justice. One which was for your partnership with an inner city school, and the other doing work around foster care. You aren't just pretending to be a social action congregation, you are living being a social action congregation. You bring teenagers every year to visit us in Washington, D.C. at Litaken. How many of you or your children have come on the Litaken high school program? This is where our young people come to Washington. They learn enduring Jewish values, they debate and discuss issues, and then they learn to elevate their voices, to speak truth to power. And in the midst of a incredibly polarized, partisan, politicized environment, speak with moral clarity about what's right and what's wrong in our world. And you were one of the founding congregations of RAC, California. For reasons I'll explain in a couple of minutes, it was a passion of mine in my leadership of our movement that social justice and civil rights doesn't happen in Washington. It happens in states and in cities and in communities across the United States, North America. And so we needed, and the first project for us to become much more local and to be much more relevant in a state was RAC, California, and you were one of the leading congregations. Some of you actually went to Sacramento just recently for the lobby day. How many were any of you in the room? Terrific. You successfully amplified enduring Jewish values. This homelessness and housing has become a priority for this congregation. You were able to bring that story to Sacramento and successfully work for legislation that will really be meaningful in the lives of lower income people and people that are in pursuit of affordable housing. You are a Brit Olam congregation. How many of you knew that? Okay, everybody say Brit. Brit. Olam. Olam. So Brit Olam literally means our covenant with the world as we want it to be. So when Cantor Doug Kotler earlier led us in the wonderful song from 1995, which he wrote in honor of the Religious Action Center, which I have the honor to direct, that text was picked on purpose, and it echoes the meaning and the theme of the Brit Olam. The prophet imagined a time that would come when, as we sung earlier, there would be peace in the land and that all people would share in God's bounty and would know protection, that no more would people be afraid. The covenant that we make as a community is with the world as we imagine it to be. The world that we could imagine when our incredible singers led us in Oseh Shalom, a world of wholeness, of peace, and of compassion. And the reason we do the Brit Olam is to say we don't set a top-down agenda in Washington. You set a bottom-up agenda here in Calabasas, California. Your people, you came together, some of you were part of a process to have one-on-one conversations, small group dialogue, to reflect on the brokenness in the world, the things that rise for us, that fly in the face of our enduring Jewish values, that are worthy of our time and attention. And those were the things that you said, we ratify this covenant, this commitment that we will make to work on together. And that's where the Sukkot Shalom initiative came from. There are people whose lives will be improved in this community because they either have services, though they are unsheltered or homeless, or may actually get housing because of the work that you all are doing. That takes the Torah out of the ark, into your hands, and then out into the actual world that we live in. so that as tomorrow it gets passed down from generation to generation, when Ella and Elijah receive the Torah, they know it means something and it has value. I remember, and I shared this earlier with some folks, when I was not much older than them, and my own congregation, all of a sudden, I grew up in New York City. Any former New Yorkers? Any? Oh, good God. Is there anybody left in New York? Manhattan? The Bronx? Okay, we'll talk. Long Island. Brooklyn. Okay, all right. We could do this all night. I'm going to stop it right here. Westchester? Staten Island? Did I really hear Staten Island?
No.
Oh, okay. That's mean. There are Jews in Staten Island.
Yeah, but they don't belong here.
All right, Cantor. 1983, I'm the president of the youth group, and so I have to go to board meetings every month for the congregation. Do you torture? Do you do this, Fred? Do you make the kids in the youth group come to board meetings at the temple? Or no, you banned that practice. Yeah, no, that's good because that's really interesting. It's, if we want to turn young Jews off to Jewish life, make them come to board meetings, right? This is a great youth strategy. Yeah. So I'm going to represent the Village Temple Youth Group, and we had this phenomenon where all of a sudden there was a person who was sleeping in the vestibule of the congregation. Homelessness, which wasn't a thing in 1982, was suddenly a thing in 1983. And suddenly I get interested because the board starts discussing what should we do about this person sleeping in the vestibule, and somebody proposes we open a shelter at the temple. And I think, now this is good. Wow. Now we're going to, have our values live in the public square. And then all of a sudden I hear people start saying, well, do we really want those people here? Now I'm the impressionable 14-year-old youth group president, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the congregation that when my father dropped dead suddenly from a heart attack, surrounded my mother, my brother, and me with comfort and with love, who taught me the care and embrace of a loving Jewish community. That's why I became a rabbi, by the way. And yet I'm welcome here, unconditionally and loved, but those people are not. Well, they compromised and they created a soup kitchen, and the rest is history, but it created an agitational question in my mind about whether or not the Torah that we read and that we transmit and that we celebrate is real in the world. When it says no less than 36 times in the Torah that you were slaves in Egypt and therefore you are to love the stranger. 36 times, which by the way is double chai. You can't make this stuff up. Does that actually mean something? And by the way, the rabbis also teach us one time it says love your neighbor as you love yourself. 36 times it says love the stranger, which means it's both 36 times harder and 36 times more important. Are you with me? So the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, 60 years old. I have the great honor to lead your movement's office in Washington as we advocate for enduring Jewish values and social justice. Our origin story is actually a story of a confrontation with anti-Semitism and the awakening of a leader who understood where the Jewish community would find strength and solidarity. How many of you have ever heard the name Kivi Kaplan? This is one of the most important names you've never heard of before. So Kivi Kaplan was like many of us who are, Ashkenazic American Jews, descendant of immigrants. He himself came to this country with nothing, was very poor, created a leather business, became very successful, and then very philanthropic, and paid it forward. But one of the most impressionable moments on Kivi Kaplan's young life when he was a newlywed marrying his bride, Emily Kaplan, they went on their honeymoon to Florida. And they traveled around, they were from the Northeast. Everywhere they went, they kept seeing a sign they had never seen before. No Jews, no dogs. They were being driven around by a black taxi driver, and they said to this driver, "What is this?" They had never seen anything like it. And the African-American driver looked at them and said, "They don't even bother with us." Kaplan came back to Boston, where he was living, and he became very involved in an organization called the NAACP. He became so involved, actually, that at the time that he stepped down in the 1970s, he was the last white Jewish president of the NAACP. In its origin, the NAA was a coalition of white Jews and black Christians. How many of you knew that historically presidents of the NAACP were white Jews? Kaplan did something else that was tremendous. he bought an embassy-sized building in DuPont Circle, just a short walk from the White House and a short ride from Capitol Hill, and he donated it to the Reformed Jewish movement. And he said, you can have this gift, but under one condition. If you commit to being a hub of civil rights activity. This was in the late 1950s. Our first director, Rabbi Dick Hirsch, his first day on the job, sitting in this 5-story mansion in DuPont Circle, which was completely empty, his first act was to call his friend, a young, charismatic pastor, and he said, Martin, good news. You have an office in Washington. And so it was that Dr. King, when he used to come to Washington, his place of work was our Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism. We played host to the Leadership Conference for Civil Rights, which was the organizing arm of the Civil Rights Movement, which is why it is that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were written in our conference room. It was at a Jewish institution, a Reform Jewish institution, that the two most important pieces of civil rights legislation in our history were crafted. And by the way, passed by overwhelming bipartisan votes in the House and in the Senate. There was a time in our country where civil rights and social justice were not a left thing or a right thing or a Republican thing or a Democratic thing. In fact, my predecessor in my role, Rabbi David Saperstein, if we were here, he would remind us that every major piece of civil rights legislation in American history was passed by bipartisan compromise. The polarization and the partisanship of this incredibly intense and dark moment is unprecedented in our history. And what I've learned in my work and in my career, that amidst all of the political polarization, the one community that has the moral authority and the people power to raise up our society to be its best moral self and to cut through the noise is the faith community. The reason that I became the director of the Religious Action Center in 2015 was that I had worked at a grassroots level, working with congregations like Kol Ami, one of the first congregations that I came to in the late 2000s, 2007, 2008, to work together across lines of difference, bringing together churches and other communities to figure out what are local solutions to local problems. And I learned this craft in Massachusetts, where I was part of a citizen movement that had heard the pain and the suffering of people in our churches and in our synagogues and our communities around the lack of access to quality, affordable health care. We had a member of our congregation whose name was Roger Gottlieb, whose daughter was turning 25, and he was petrified because she was going to go off the family health plan, and he didn't have enough money to buy her private insurance. We had members of our congregations who were emergency room physicians who were considering leaving medicine because people with preventable diseases were dying in their arms because they didn't have access to quality, affordable health care. 100,000 citizen leaders together in their churches, African American Christians, Latino Catholics, Jews, people from the suburbs, people from the city, got together, they talked to each other, they listened to one another, they heard their stories, and together they organized. And they put pressure on a Republican governor and a Democratic legislature to pass what was called Romney Care, which when fully effectuated meant that every citizen in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts had access to quality, affordable care. It was a piece of legislation that actually had the support of the big labor unions and the Chamber of Commerce. It was endorsed by the healthcare providers and by the insurers. It was signed into law by Governor Romney and was passed by a Democratic-controlled legislature. Now ask yourself, what in America gets the support of unions and business, of providers and insurers, Republicans or Democrats? Only something driven by the faith community. Because it lifts up the moral claim of a society that wants to be its best self, and it organizes its people, its citizens, so that our elected officials, our business leaders, and other stakeholders understand what the people of a community, together in our pews and in our communities and our congregations, actually stand for. What Kivi Kaplan understood at a moment of intense anti-Semitism, a moment when he saw that sign, no Jews, no dogs, And his tendency might have been to close off or shut down and protect and defend. He heard the voice of a black American saying, "They don't even bother with us." Kaplan discovered at that moment what Dr. King meant when he taught, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so he turned himself outward to the broader community and challenged the Jews to protect and defend themselves and their interests and their values by reaching out and building the relationships across lines of difference. So how does this show up in our world today? Folks, we're at, not just metaphorically, literally, the darkest time of the year. This is like a hard Jewish time of the year. Think about it. There's like no holidays right now. Right? I mean, there's always Jewish holidays, right? The rabbis didn't like this period of time. They called it a bitter time because like Simchat Torah and Sukkot, which we're so happy as we were dancing with the Torahs, feels like really long ago. Literally, the days are getting dark. It's even raining in LA. Like people, I had to come all the way out here so that it could rain. And Hanukkah feels really far away, and it's late this year. Spoiler alert. That's when we'll start to light lights and bring joy and miracles. So at this dark time, we're also keenly aware that we're still within only a few months after the first anniversary, the yard site of probably what will go down in our history as the darkest day of the Jewish community in America in our history, the shooting in Pittsburgh at Tree of Life Synagogue. So I want to share with you a picture of the work that I saw and was part of in Pittsburgh to help you have a sense of light and hope, to animate the story of no Jews, no dogs, they didn't even bother with us, and what it can mean for us in the world of anti-Semitism and bigotry that we're experiencing in this unprecedented moment here in America. In Washington, D.C., I live about 5 hours drive from Pittsburgh. And at the time that the shooting happened, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who's the president of the Reformed Jewish Movement, happened to be in Israel. And I realized as I watched the news that I was the senior ranking member of the Reformed Jewish Movement. And I had to get in the car and just drive to Pittsburgh. When I got there, I saw a Jewish community that had come together, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, secular. The JCC was standing room only as the Jewish community came together to make sense of how they were going to protect and defend ourselves in this moment of intense fear and pain. And there was a lot of fear. And the Doug Kotler song that we read earlier literally said, "That day shall come when no one shall be afraid." I went from the JCC to the University of Pittsburgh to meet with the Jewish students at Hillel. Again, standing room only. Dozens and dozens of Jewish students who were afraid. They had been organized by Catherine Fleischer, who is the former president of NIFTY, our North American Youth Movement. She had been one of the leaders that organized students after the Parkland shooting to engage in the March for Our Lives and to try and call attention to the plague of shootings in schools. Tearfully, she met me at the door and said, "Rabbi, when will enough be enough? When will my friends and I know that it's safe to be in our schools or to be in our shuls?" And the students asked for help, not only to have pastoral care and solidarity and support, but also to understand what were the ways that they could come together and get the adult world to pay attention to their lives and what was at stake. I went from there to Soldiers and Sailors Hall, which was where the vigil took place. How many of you saw did you have a vigil here after? Okay, so almost every community in America had some kind of vigil, and what was remarkable is that at every vigil across the country, it wasn't just the Jewish community coming together, it was the local churches, it was the local mosques, it was every place we looked, it was standing room only. There at Soldiers and Sailors, there had to have been 10,000 people. The room itself was standing room only. They had to put up jumbotrons outside the hall in the parking lot so that all the people who had come that couldn't get in could actually watch what was happening. And here's what I saw. The leaders of the Jewish community, they stood, they spoke, they were powerful, they were reassuring, they were moving, and then the full array of the Pittsburgh interfaith community came to show solidarity. The leader of the Muslim community stood up and said, "The Muslim community of Pittsburgh is committed to raising all of the money for the funerals or other needs of the Jewish community and the families at this moment." They raised over $300,000. And he said, "We in the Muslim community will stand guard outside your synagogues to protect you if that's what you need from us." And we saw an unprecedented period of time where, especially after the Christchurch in New Zealand shooting, Jews were going to mosques to show solidarity, Muslims were coming to visit synagogues. And here's the next speaker who spoke, and this was probably the most powerful and moving testimony to the learning that I want to share with you tonight. He was the most powerful pastor of a black church in Pittsburgh. And he stood before the crowd and he said, "Let me say 3 things. Number 1, this was an act of violence against Jews. It was anti-Semitism. We need to say that and name it. And an attack on Jews is an attack on all of us. Full stop." And he said, "Let us also remember that 3 days ago, 2 black people were shot at a Kroger supermarket because the shooter had tried to get into a church that was locked because of the Mother Emanuel shooting several years before, in which 9 black Christians were gunned down." Reminding us, no Jews, no dogs, they don't even bother with us. And then he said, let's also remember one last thing. The shooter targeted the Tree of Life Synagogue because it was the highest congregation, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, that had declared itself in solidarity with refugees and with migrants. We here in Pittsburgh are going to be in solidarity with one another. And the place spontaneously erupted with cheers and with chanting. And this was at a vigil in which people were still mourning. It was only a day after. I share that story because it paints a picture, even during these dark times, the ways in which the relationships that we build right at the grassroots level, right here in Calabasas where you live, relationships with low-income churches, with churches across town, with the Muslim community, with the Christian community, it's through our solidarity that we find safety. That time in the future where we think none shall be afraid can only happen when we only open ourselves up to the relationships and to the safety. One last story, and with this I'll conclude. You got time for one more? Okay. During the last election in 2018, our movement made a commitment because we were, of course, the place of the drafting of the Voting Rights Act, the most significant piece of civil rights legislation to protect the most sacred act in American democracy, the right to vote. Whatever your party, whatever your ideology, to be an American is to vote and to engage. And so we launched a nonpartisan 501c3 appropriate campaign to get every Reformed Jew to vote and to work across lines of difference to make sure any American had access to the ability to vote and would vote around the things that animate or that they care about. And one of the tools that we used to get people to vote was working on ballot initiatives in states where there were ballot initiatives that reflected the values and the concerns of our folks. Here in California, you worked on a very successful ballot initiative that I think wound up providing affordable housing funding, whatever it was. I can't remember exactly what it was in California. But I want to share with you what happened in this great state of Florida, the same place where Kivy Kaplan saw that first sign, no Jews, no dogs. I was down visiting Florida in 2017, and I got a call from someone named Desmond Meade. Desmond Meade is an organizer, African-American, about 6'4", and he was working on something called the Second Chances campaign. And he was in Orlando, Florida. I was in Boca Raton with our synagogue there, and my cell phone rang, and the person said, Desmond Meade is desperate to meet with you. He's in Orlando. He'll come drive down to Boca right now. Now, how many of you know the ride from, that is a long drive. So Desmond shows up to Boca, and I said, I'm honored you wanted to meet with me, but what was so important? You drove 3 hours to come here. He said, I really want to ask you to invite the Reformed Jewish movement to be part of the Second Chances campaign. I said, well, what's the Second Chances campaign? He said, Florida is one of only 4 states that if you have committed a felony and you have completed your sentence, when you return to society, you're not allowed to vote. It was a leftover vestige of the Jim Crow era. And he said, we are trying to organize people to pass this ballot initiative. It's nonpartisan. It has support of the right and the left. Will you work on this? I said, of course we will. This is wonderful. It's a good thing. But I said to him, Desmond, what's your story? Why do you care about this? And he said, well, he grew up in North Carolina, the son of a pastor, And after he finished high school, he went into the U.S. Army to serve our country. And while he was serving, he wound up with PTSD. He came back to the United States and self-medicated for his PTSD and became addicted. And as a result of his addiction, he became unemployed and ultimately homeless and then incarcerated. And while he was in jail, he earned his college degree, he earned his law degree, he appealed his conviction, and he got out. And he said, I decided to move to Florida and organize young black men who were not showing up to vote and be their role model and say, we need to vote, we need to exercise. He said, remember in Florida, elections are decided by like 7 hanging chads. We need to get our people voting. And everywhere he went, he said, he would meet these young black men who would say, we don't vote, we don't vote. And when he kind of looked at it more carefully, he realized they weren't saying we don't vote, they were saying we can't vote. And he also remembered his father, the pastor, who every Sunday before a big election would gather the whole extended family and say, who are we voting for? And he realized if you take out that patriarchal character, it's not just these young men who weren't voting, it's whole social networks that were becoming disempowered. And I said to him, Desmond, you have me, I'm with you, we will absolutely do this. And by the way, by overwhelming bipartisan support, question 4 passed. And in this election coming up, 1.4 million Floridians will have the right to vote that did not formerly have the right to vote. And you should definitely celebrate that. In fact, Desmond went across Florida and on Friday nights would tell his story as part of Shabbat services, which is part of the way our congregation. We had all the ladies of Boca Raton, the Mahjong ladies, out canvassing on question 4. With this, I'll close. I said to Desmond, I need to ask you one last question. How is it that at the darkest time of your life, in the pit where Joseph was, incarcerated, right, in that dark place, how did you have the courage and the strength, the hope to be able to pull yourself up and get your education and turn your life around? And he said, well, Rabbi, I learned it from your tradition. He said, I remembered when I was a young man, my father, the pastor, brought home for Sunday dinner one time a Jewish fellow. Maybe he was a rabbi. And that rabbi told the story that in the land of Israel, there are 2 seas. There is a sea to the north, the Galilee, the Kinneret, that is the giving sea. It's a sea that water flows in from the Jordan River and back out, and it irrigates the land, and there are orchards, and there are flowers, and there's fertility. But there is in the land of Israel another sea, a Dead Sea. The water flows in from the Jordan, and that sea clamps down, shuts off, hangs on to everything, and dies. He said, Rabbi, I understood I needed to be like that first sea and give life. During these dark times, when we're afraid and tempted to close ourselves off, let's be like Kivi Kaplan and open ourselves up. Let's be like Desmond Meade and find strength and courage and safety and hope in our relationships. Shabbat Shalom.
So, whenever the rabbis or the cantor disappear for a couple of days or a week for rabbinic conference, we're going to plug back in. We're going to listen to Rabbi Pesner and his team. We're going to get re-energized. What made me most proud was not just the work that's been happening in the Jewish community all over the world, but that my friend has seen the work that Cantor Doug, Rabbi Julia, that our rabbinic intern Mayor Bargeron, that our organizing team, our Sukkot Shalom team are doing. And that they know that Or Ami is shining the light in the darkest times. Thank you, Jonah, for coming all the way out here, even in the rain and the darkness, to be with us. Thank you for bringing Lee Winkleman, our local organizer of Reform RAC California, and David Harris, one of our former faculty who's on the URJ team, to help us shine the light. We promise you that Or Ami will continue to be a light, a beacon of light and justice and compassion in the days and years ahead. Amen. Amen. So I'd like to invite up any of our Madruchei Shira back with us. If you're able to, let me invite everybody to stand up or come together if you're comfortable. Put your arms around the people next to you. I'll give you the words as we sing our way through. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom.
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 V'ha'amidenu shomreinu.
V'ha'amidenu shomreinu.
L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Fros aleinu. Sukkot shlomecha. Fros aleinu. Sukkot shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings.
Shelter us beneath thy wings.
O Adonai.
O Adonai.
Guard us from all harmful things.
Guard us from all harmful things.
O Adonai.
O Adonai.
Keep us safe throughout the night.
Keep us safe throughout the night.
Till we wake with morning's light.
Till we wake with morning's light.
Teach us to all daily wrongful rights. O Adonai. Amen. The work of justice doesn't just happen. It takes beautiful music, the singing of our chorale, our incredible instrumentalists, our Madruchei Shira, to lift us up and remind us what we're doing it for. It takes the work of an organizing team like our Sukkot Shalom team, and a rabbi and an organizer to do the work with Reform California. If you want to know what we've succeeded in the last couple of years, out there you'll find some voting records of the important things we've done. It takes being part of a national movement that when we're tired and we don't have the strength to do things, is still out there and utzing us and inspiring us. The last thing that Rabbi Julia and I did before Shabbos came in, before we lit the candles and became peaceful, is go up to Rabbi Jonah and say, I know we gave at the tzedek level last year. We commit for the next 3 years to do the same because the work you're doing is important. I know you give all over and you give to Or Ami, but if you're looking for a place to give where you are going to shine the light, the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism is one of the best bets. I was an intern there for 1 year. I sat in the room as they were talking about legislation. My life was changed. The direction was changed because of them. You can be part of it. Support this organization, please, please, please. And finally, remember this. When it gets darkest, Jews light the light, as Rabbi Jonah said. Join with Rabbi Julia, talk to our rabbinic intern Meir, talk to our president Leslie Kraut, Kathy, and all the others who are on the organizing team. Get involved and help shine the light. It's not enough to feel good. Let's make it good out there. And then we'll be singing Amen. That's a prayer. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Join us out there for some Kiddush and